One of my responsibilities as a visual effects supervisor is always to work very closely with a special effects supervisor, and that's a person who does all the practical stuff on set. And John Fraser was just a great guy.
He builds great stuff, and he just has these wild ideas. And the wind machine that they had was a 707 jet motor mounted on a 40-foot truck with another 40-foot container above it to push debris into it.
I went out into the desert out in Mojave where they have the airplane graveyard out there. We said, okay, we're looking for a jet motor. And I said, turn that one on. I said, nah, Jan's not gonna like that. I said, how about that big one over there? What size is that? They said, well, that's a Boeing 707. That sounds good. I like the sound of that. They fueled it up, fired it up, and I said, okay, I'll take 2 of those. So they literally took them off the wings of the airplane, and then we took them back to our facility in Sun Valley and mounted them on trucks. And when you're doing a movie like Twister, debris is what it's all about.
Debris! We have debris!
And whenever it's close to somebody, we will make it out of rubber or lightweight. What we did was we just had people go out and we just brought in stuff from recycling plants. And then we had to clean it all. Anything that we had to be all sanitized.
We're off to see the wizard!
What we did was we just put a big box up on top of the jet motor, and then we just literally got inside the box and we'd shovel the debris outside the box, and then when it would fall into the exhaust and then just propel it. We did a lot of traveling range shots where we had 3 vehicles, and the lead vehicle was a 4,000-gallon water truck. Then we had the insert car that had the camera crew on it. And then we had the picture car, which was the big red truck. We hooked all of them together, and the water truck pulled everything.
So if you start your hill when you're on top of the bridge, the first part, aim it sideways.
I remember when we started researching what we were going to use for hail. We went into plastic ice cubes and this and that, and finally we got a few blocks of ice, these 300-pound blocks of ice, and we took an ice crusher that we normally use for snow. We altered it a little bit, slowed it down, and what came out of it was these big chunks of ice. So we put milk in each block of ice. That was the color in it, so it was opaque. Then we set up the machine and we did a test.
Swami, how much ice we got left?
We saw the footage and it really looked cool.
There were things where I suggested, okay, you definitely try to do this practically. And John is certainly a very hardy special effects supervisor. I mean, he will just about try anything.
What is that? One of the most important things in the movie is to keep the combination of physical effects and visual effects in scale so that one doesn't jump out from the other. So, for instance, when the tanker gets lifted up by the twister and pulled up in the air and then falls down, that's for real.
The big tanker truck we dropped from a crane. We made that whole tanker truck out of lightweight aluminum and lightweight rubber tires, and then we actually had it rigged so that it would swing into the pickup truck, and then from there Stefan Fengmeyer at ILM took over.
When it comes out of the tornado and scrapes towards them, it was a CGI truck, because that kind of movement you just couldn't do with a full-size truck. But then later on, of course, once it's gotten over them, it turn around and drive back, and it falls out of the sky and explodes. That was a real, that was a real explosion. I think there were probably about 16 cameras on that.
There was over 1,000 gallons of gasoline in that tanker truck. Actually, we did that twice. We had another tanker truck. A week later, we came back and did it again. And, of course, we wanted to do it again because it was just fun to see,
I thought one of the ultimate things has to be that it really picks up a house and rolls it down the street.
Oh my God!
I had seen some footage of it, and, obviously you cannot do that for real.
When it actually sort of tumbles across and then just sort of lands smack on the road, that is, of course, computer animated, because there's no rig that you could use, even a huge crane or whatever, without immediately destroying the house. There was a practical house that actually was put on the street. The truck drives into it.
The front of the house was upright, but the back of the house was upside down. Well, the truck drives through the front door, but when it comes out the back, the house is upside down. So it looks like the house has done a 360 degrees revolution, when in reality, it never did anything.
We had built sections of the set where the car would go in high speed. So it was basically 6 or 7 different sets.
It all takes place over a span of 5 or 6 weeks in different locations. So it just takes a long time, and you know, there's 20 different pieces in there.
I thought it was such a fun thing to do. We went from bedroom, living room, kitchen, and came out on the other side. And on the road, and it's like, what the hell just happened to us? But it was extremely complex to do.
Careful, careful. This house could go any second.
In those days, when we were there, it's actually not even that long ago, a lot of people were moving towards the city. So we found a lot of tiny little towns where very few people lived. And I was looking for a space that could be used for that particular scene.
Man, the art department did a great job. I think it was Waukeeta was the name of the town. And there were a lot of empty buildings that they really wanted to get rid of, and they were trying to rebuild.
Basically what we used is the houses where nobody lived, we tore down and used them as set dressing, so it looked real.
The art department just did a fantastic, cars up in trees and houses destroyed.
The exterior of the house was in the town called Waukeeta. And then to have control over the interiors, it was built on the inside of the soundstage. It was actually a warehouse that we found in Norman, Oklahoma.
The more real it looked to me, the better the scene would work. And that, I think, made that scene so fantastic, is that, like I saw the other night on TV again, it was like another one of those Twister disasters. It gets completely flattened.
Them running and then these fence posts becoming sort of projectiles at spear. That was shot on location.
We spent 2 or 3 months making the mechanism that was under the ground that would make that fence do that as they were running by it. And we just pushed this whole thing with air, and it's just, as it's going by, wherever there was a hole, the air would go up the hole and push the piece of the picket fence out.
Put the projectiles in at the last minute.
And then run into the big barn. It's full of farm implements that would just, you know, take your head off immediately.
Oh my God, who are these people?
So they run out of that again and finally run towards this little water pump shed. And in there, you know, knowing that the tornado was coming, tied themselves to the iron pipes there.
There was a shot that Jan needed that we couldn't do on location, that we shot months later. And it required building this incredible, weird kind of Ferris wheel type of effect gantry that I guess John Fraser figured out.
When we were having our earlier meetings, there was a shot where the two characters get sucked up in the tornado. So they said, well, anybody, you know, got any ideas how we're going to do that? So I said, you know, we can go back 50 years and like Fred Astaire dancing on the walls. That sounded pretty archaic. Well, 6 months later, after we finished the movie, I get a call and I showed them what we'd do. We literally put the set inside a big ring and attached the camera to it, and then we had a big fan underneath it, and it rode with it. So as that ring went around and the camera went with it, they actually were just like hanging upside down, but camera-wise, it looked like they were going straight up into the eye of the tornado.
The actors would go all the way to the top, and then they really hang. So it looks like they're being pushed from the top, which I had wind machines all around, so that as they got higher, the wind would come from the right direction. And that worked fantastic.
Okay, having a look, let's stand by, please.
Really the big thing about Twister that people might not realize, the way it was photographed was really quite much more dynamic and sort of quite freer than visual effects before were really done. We really didn't do any blue screen for the movie at all. So all the things where we had to put the tornadoes behind the running people, it kind of comes down to digital paint work where you kind of rotoscope. It's very hard work, but I think it was absolutely necessary to make this film seem real, that you really were there.
The most difficult thing in those days is what people don't remember, is that originally when you make a movie with visual effects in those days, you put the camera on a tripod, you lock it off, and you make very little pans. Well, there's one thing we're going to have to change. This camera will never be on a tripod because, you know, you cannot get a sense of danger and action and and incredible change, quick changes if I cannot put this camera on my shoulder. We made a lot of tests while we were shooting and see if we could do it. One other thing that I really enjoyed later on in post was actually when we had to come down to what those twisters are going to look like, is helping to design the look of the twisters.
Now, the thing we did certainly for research was to gather all the footage we could. The biggest problem was that, of course, it's very difficult to find any film footage because they are so unpredictable. Jan watched a lot of that, obviously, as well, too, to really duplicate that experience of how chaotic it is and all the different elements in it. And so our approach was to sort of look at that and then say, okay, now how would that look on film?
How does it fit in the landscape and where does it connect? Because if you don't have it connect, if you don't see this interaction between where it hits the ground and the ground itself, then it's not going to work. Then it becomes just like an object that's just put in there. And that was difficult.
They had sort of a storm unit that actually started filming, I think, a month before, and drove down all the panhandle there from Oklahoma to Texas and to just get some footage of huge storm fronts. And we were able to use some of those. Where other sequences, for instance, Hailstorm Hill, where they're driving up the hill and then the hail starts happening, they try to get the Dorothy off the truck. That whole swirling sky and off, that was all computer generated because there was literally nothing up there but blue sky or gray sky at least, you know. And so sometimes we had to create it all and sometimes we were able to use something that was there as a sort of a starter kit.
We do not have a visual. Help us out here.
We did have a lot of reference in it, and there were a lot of different looks. They always do look different. It always depends also what they're going through, what kind of color earth they're picking up, and you know how much water content is there, and how much of a speed do they travel, and the wind speed inside of them. So you try to use all of those, and then it's really, you know, working with somebody like Jan also to articulate that. That one in the end was probably like a wall of elephants coming through.
Run!
While some of the other ones were much more elegant in a way. I thought the water funnels were sort of like, you know, you could sort of say like water fairies dancing out there in their own little mysterious dance. Now animating them, really, it's actually a fairly simple task in terms of their movement because you're just really animating a little string around which you build the tornado. So in that terms of animation, it was easy, but then creating the tornado around it was the hard part. Instead of having a solid surface, you're really using a completely different approach to represent mass. I mean, the mass of a tornado, which is literally billions and billions and billions of particles. None of this existed when we started, and Twister was certainly the technology created for a tremendous foray for industrial light and magic into using particle systems to that extent.
What are you doing?
What I really wanted to make sure is that the threat was growing. You know, during the course of the movie, the audience understands what it really means, a tornado. And you start with a small one. So you're taught a little bit what a small one can do. So you set up a little bit then what a bigger one could do.
Whoa!
I really wanted to create characters because they are talking to the Twister.
Come on, take her!
They see it as a character themselves. It's something they battle. So they take it personal.
You've never seen it miss this house and miss that house and come after you.
So it was for me very important to create a character for every different Twister.
Okay, we got sisters.
You read a lot of different accounts of what happens in tornadoes, and I think there was really one where a farmer had said that he had missed some of his cattle and then it was found literally 20 miles away. So it was sort of reconstructed that the tornado had actually picked them up but also put them back down in a relatively gentle fashion because they were still alive. And that's where the cow came from.
I remember doing the flying cow sequence, and Jan was trying to coordinate so that me and Helen and Jamie, our eye line is going the same length.
The key thing is how do the actors relate to something they don't see, because that's the one thing they could not see in the set. I could not on the set create the actual Twister. So basically I kind of had to act it out, you know, and I was running around where the Twister was and with bullhorns and so that the actors had something to react to.
He goes, Bill, no, you're not watching here. The cow is flying. Here it comes. Follow the hand, follow the fingers. It comes around. Now it's coming around again. Now your line. Here comes the cow flying by again. It's so funny because that is such a popular moment in the movie, especially with young kids and stuff. They love the flying cow. I told Jan my version would be, in the Gothic version, the cow would fly by once, and then you wouldn't see the cow again. Then about 15 seconds, it would just rain hamburger meat down on the car as the barometric pressure just exploded the cow.